a birth certificate for my child because me and my husband do not have any supporting documents such as a citizenship certificate or marriage certificate. My biggest fear in life is for my daughter to suffer the same fate as mine due to lack of vital registration certificates.
I was brought into an orphanage when I was around 8 months old. I was issued a temporary birth certificate, certified with signature and seal by the Assistant General. But this document was not recognized by the leading schools in Gala, Sri Lanka. Because of that, I had to settle with other less prestigious schools.
Without certificate, we do not find a job, go to school, and travel.
These registration difficulties also reflect a social exclusion based on one's identity, race, or ethnicity.
Cannot get legal documents. Our families, they did not recognize us, so can't make legal documents for us.
Many Rohingyas has entered our country. They have no birth certificate of Bangladesh. Bangladesh will not give them birth certificate.
เกี่ยวกับเด็กนะคะการทำใบเกิดของเด็กคือ
There is the parents who are Cambodian and Thai. They already checked their DNA already, but the test is said that they have Thai blood like only 40%, so that children cannot prove that they are Thai, and then they cannot get the birth registration.
Civil registration is the system by which a government records vital events, such as births, deaths, and marriages. It provides people with important legal documentation they need to prove their identity and family relationships and make claims of nationality, fulfilling their human rights before the law and their formal relationship with the state. Civil registration facilitates access to essential services such as healthcare, education and social protection, and it enables political participation, property ownership, recourse to justice, formal employment, inheritance, and the use of banking and financial services. It also offers the basis for identity documents such as a passport or ID card. Civil registration systems should be permanent, compulsory, universal and continuous, so that they can generate records for the whole population on an ongoing basis over time. As well as providing documents for individuals, a civil registration system generates the most accurate, complete and timely vital statistics on the population, in particular the numbers of births and deaths and causes of death.
Conference on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics in Asia and the Pacific. This event is co-organized by World Vision Asia Pacific together with CRC Asia, UNSCAP, and UNICEF. I am Caroline from World Vision Philippines, one of the moderators for today's session. Feel free to also share this with your network as well so more people can join in on our conversation on civil registration and vital statistics, and to use hashtag count us in the picture on your posts so we can also see them. Quick survey. Have you experienced discrepancies on your birth or marriage registration? Or do you know someone who was not able to access basic services because there's a problem on their birth certificate? Friends, the sad reality tells us that globally, births of 166 million children under the age of 5 have never been recorded. And 39% or 65 million of this are from Asia and the Pacific. The issue on civil registration is very important because it affects the lives of children and impacts their access to basic services such as healthcare, education, and livelihood. Today, we will share with you the report on Children and Youth Consultation on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics, hear the experiences and recommendations of children and youth on CRVS, and engage them in meaningful participation to address the challenges in achieving universal and responsive CRVS. As we start, for those joining us on Zoom, feel free to greet your fellow participants by writing your first name, just your first name, organization, and country in the chat. Those who are on Facebook, feel free to introduce yourself in our comment section. And while you do that, a very important reminder as we have children and young people in our session, for child safeguarding, please do not share your contact details or any personal information as you introduce yourself. Young leaders, if at some point you feel uncomfortable, do not hesitate to inform your adult mentor or to send a direct message to any of our panelists so we can assist you. Now, let's meet some of our participants. I'm seeing people here from World Vision Mongolia. Kalamka says hi. We have Romain from Vital Strategies in Singapore. We also have Angel from World Vision Philippines, Hang, an area program manager from World Vision Vietnam, and we also have Chloe from UNSCAP Bangkok. Ayan, we're seeing so many names right now. Let me check our Facebook if we have some people who are saying hi. Okay, from World Vision Philippines, there's no comment yet. No one's still introducing themselves, but keep your comments coming as we want this conference to be as interactive as possible. Again, welcome and thank you again for joining us today. If you have any questions in the course of our discussion, kindly type them in our chat box and we will do our best to address them later. Also, please don't forget to use the hashtag count us in the picture on your posts. Again, that's count us in the picture so we can see them. At this point, I am excited to introduce to you my co-moderator this afternoon, who is the president of Boses ng Kabataan, or Voice of the Youth, and the president of his school's Supreme Student Government. Please welcome 14-year-old child leader and delegate from the Philippines, Abdul Rahim. Hi, Abdul.
Hello, Carol. So thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all doing well. And again, welcome to Count Us in the Picture.
Thank you for being here as well, Abdul. I heard you were able to take part in consultations, forums, and other activities on CRVS. Can you tell us how was that experience for you and why do you think it is important for us to talk about this issue?
Yes, Carol, you are right. I am one of the honored participants during the in-country consultations, regional forum, and other activities that the UNSCAP together with the World Vision, UNICEF, and other partner CSOs have organized to hear out the voices, our voices with regards to issues and concerns that we are bringing, which our country is currently experiencing. So during the consultations and forums, we, the children and youth delegates, have shared the challenges that our country is experiencing and stress reasons why some of the citizens cannot or do not have access to birth, marriage, and death registration, which prohibits their right to identity. We, the children and youth, also gave our recommendations to have a better access and to give every citizen of our country the right to identity. With this, I know that together we can make a better and a great future for everyone.
I agree with you, Abdul, and we're really excited to hear the outcomes of your discussions. So, without any more delays, kindly introduce our first speaker.
Okay, so to give us welcome message as well as brief overview of today's topic, I'd like to call on the Director for Advocacy and External Engagement of World Vision Asia Pacific, Ms. Catherine Rose Yee.
Thank you so much. Am I here? Am I audible?
Yes po, loud and clear.
Thank you so much, Abdul. It is my honor to be here with you this afternoon. Back in 2015, I vividly remember that in World Vision, we were excited to inform one of our young leaders that he was selected by his fellow youth to represent them in the ADB's or Asia Development Bank's Youth Forum in Yokohama, Japan. The excitement that everybody felt turned into long, grueling processing of papers because there were errors in his birth registration certificate and he could not get a passport. To cut the long story short, we were able to get him a passport, but it was too late to process his visa for Japan. Nevertheless, he was able to join other international conventions later on. This is just one of the many heartbreaks our children and youth experience with regards to CRVS. And I know there are even more stories out there that you have shared, as you mentioned, Abdul. I am very honored to welcome you today. Thank you very much for your time. I would like to especially welcome our children and young leaders represented here by Abdul, Amalea, Juhi, Danushka, and Alisa. Our friends from UNESCAP, Rachel, from UNICEF, Lucho, from CRC Asia, we have Amihan, Hazel, and of course, we have a lot of our colleagues are working in the background. Ariel, Inda, Sheikh, thank you very much. Kudos to all of you. Finally, after almost 10 months of carefully treading all the in-country consultations, the regional forum, we have come into this momentous event. Just one step before we are able to present your opinions and recommendations in the second CRVS Ministerial Conference next week. Isn't that exciting? From March to April 2021, more than 560 children and youth from 11 countries were consulted. Your experiences documented, your recommendations heard. In 2014, through the leadership of UNESCAP and of course our governments, ministers made commitment to ensure that everyone gets in the picture and declared the CRVS decade. The ministerial declaration to get everyone in the picture in Asia and Pacific defines the shared vision that by 2024, that's a few years from now, all people in the region will benefit from universal and responsive CRVS system that facilitate the realization of your rights and support good governance, health, and development. Since 2012, the number of unregistered children under 5 across Asia and Pacific have significantly been reduced, resulting in greater access to health, education, and financial services. We, of course, commend our leaders for this improvement. However, we acknowledge that there are still gaps in the CRVS system affecting the most vulnerable children, such as yourself. We have heard personal stories from our children and youth, how they have not accessed higher education, denied employment and travel. One story is enough to take up this cause. Now, once again, we come together because it is our collective responsibility to hold everybody accountable. As we always say in World Vision, children's voice is at the core of everything that we do. We are accountable to you. We will journey together until we see the change in the CRVS system that we are calling for today. Once again, thank you. And I do hope that we will all have an enjoyable time learning together. Good afternoon. Back to you, Abdul.
Okay, so thank you, Miss Kat. So it is true that we are one step closer on our Second Ministerial Conference on November 17, if I am not mistaken. So it is also true that we, the children, we should put our duty bearers accountable for their responsibilities that they have to do for us to being able to cope up and to have the rights or fulfill our rights. So at this juncture, here to talk about the importance of conducting child-friendly consultations with children and youth in issues concerning them. Please welcome Ms. Hazel Bitanya, CRC Asia Program Manager.
Thank you, Abdul. And if I may say, you and Caroline are doing a great job moderating and guiding us all in the program today. Good day to everyone. Our journey that led us to this day is quite long. It may be longer for some people, but for me personally, and perhaps also for the partnership between CRC Asia and World Vision, I date this back to when we conducted a 2019 Asian Children's Summit in Bangkok, where child rights organizations in Asia worked together and collaborated with two intergovernmental regional bodies to create a platform for children to raise their voices about the Asia they want. One of the recommendations that arose from that summit is governments must be active in issuing identification documents of children on the move and children seeking refuge in a different country, and it should be fast and not slow. So CRS Asia and World Vision are some of the organizers of the summit, along with UNICEF. And as organizers, one of our roles is to make sure that we amplify these children's recommendations and create and grab the opportunities that will convert these to action. So when ESCA presented us this opportunity to hold the consultations with children and young people to inform decision makers, we gladly said yes. CRVS is not really one of the priority themes of CRS Asia, but with the results of the summit, we grabbed this opportunity. And with that background, I can say that at the very beginning, this consultation is anchored on the voices of children. It's anchored on child participation, and we try to uphold this principle all throughout. I admit it's not that easy, especially with the pandemic. We started the project almost a year ago today, and I have to give it to the children and youth who continue to partner with us energetically, to our consultants and to the adult mentors and partner organizations who helped us ensure that we use a participatory approach. We had a number of activities for this project. I think my slide will be showing for a while. We had consultations at the country level. We held an online regional forum. There were several meetings of the children who were selected to continue working on the joint video statement to be presented during the ministerial conference. And we already have follow-up actions identified, including having child-friendly CRVS including having a child-friendly CRVS website, which you will get to see later today too. So in conducting all these activities, we used several strategies to ensure that they are safe, inclusive, and child-friendly. In the country consultations, for example, we employed hybrid methods. Some conducted face-to-face group discussions, some did it online, some had one-on-one face-to-face interviews, and some did a combination of these. And we also prepared child-friendly information or briefer for children before joining the activities, including a child-friendly child protection policy. We provided logistical and administrative assistance, like giving access to devices or access to internet connection or translation. And also, as you can see in the slide, we have a multi-step process that started at the country level, expanding to regional. And we asked the children themselves to select who they want to be the representatives to the regional forum and statement core group in succeeding activities. We value their inputs on how to move forward with the next steps. Just an example, Abdul and the rest of the members of the statement core group, some of them you will meet today, their suggestions on how to proceed were taken into careful consideration. Of course, we made sure that we have risk assessments and child safeguarding measures in place in all our actions. We did face some challenges like time management during the regional forum and scheduling. The children, after all, have schools and other commitments, and even the adults who are providing support, they have to be flexible with their schedule. The surge of Delta variant and the political situation in some countries affected their work. And then there is that limitation of online platforms for regional activities. We learned a lot from all these, and these challenges were still trumped by what we have gained from co-creating these platforms with children. I'm not going to preempt the presentation of the succeeding speakers who will speak about the results of the consultations, but I will mention that the results reflect how important it is to get children in the picture, counting them, and giving them that space and voice to be part of the CRVS decision-making processes. The stories they have shared, which you can find in the report, they give light to the unique experiences of children and young people in the CRVS system that adults sometimes forget, like how important it is to have a registration staff who is friendly to them, or those who do not bully and discriminate. And on a personal note, at the beginning of this project, I had an assumption that children and young people might not be that concerned yet about marriage or death certificates, but the results of the consultation show how these two records of vital life events affect children and young people as well. So my time is up, and I would like to end by introducing a video. It is 12 minutes. I think you already saw part of it earlier, and I'm trusting that the technical team have the video on standby. So everyone, please join me in watching this video of the Children and Youth Consultations on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics in Asia and the Pacific.
Protecting the human rights of children begins with securing their legal identities. A universal and responsive civil registration and vital statistics system facilitates the realization of human rights of all individuals. In preparation for the 2021 Ministerial Conference on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics in Asia and the Pacific, several organizations collaborated to hold a series of consultations and a forum with children and youth from the region. The discussions aimed to learn about their experiences and perspectives on birth, marriage, and death certification. It also intended to get the commitment of governments to the Regional Action Framework on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics. Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, different child-friendly tools and processes were set up to meet the specific contexts of the participants. Participants from 10 countries were consulted via online group meetings or face-to-face interviews or focus group discussions. From these consultations, an online forum was held last May 29, 2021. 61 child and youth delegates attended the regional event.
Turn on your videos.
Nice to meet you all.
Nice to meet you all.
Good morning.
Hello.
Terima kasih.
Hello. Since 2012, we've worked with countries in Asia and the Pacific to help getting everyone in the picture. And it's so important for us to understand better why it's difficult to get registered and what it means for families and for children and for youth who are not registered. In November this year, government ministers who are responsible for civil registration and vital statistics in Asia and the Pacific will hold a large conference to discuss how to make sure that every birth and death is registered so they can make better decisions for the benefit of everyone. Your voices will make them work harder to get everyone in the picture and registered.
A child safeguarding policy and protocol was implemented in all online and offline activities.
Hello, everyone. I'm Amihan, and I'm your child safeguarding officer for this afternoon. If there's any concern, please feel free. You can send a chat, or you can also use the numbers in the technical notes that you can send me a message through Viber or a WhatsApp.
The delegates had access to guide questions, adult mentors, and interpreters. Online or offline, the participants agreed registration is their gateway to government services. However, they found institutional weaknesses that prevent access to these services.
Okay, so thank you for your insights, Miss Hazel. So I myself admit that UNSCAP and other CSOs and partner organizations played a very big role in giving children and youth like us to be able to speak and to serve as a voice for our fellow children and youth delegate all over the world. So again, if you have questions for our speakers, please put them in our chat so our panelists can address them. Now, to share the key findings of the Children and Youth Consultations on CRVS, I would like to call on the Executive Director of CRC Asia, Ms. Amihan Abueva.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Amihan, and I'm from the Child Rights Coalition Asia, and I'm so pleased to discuss with you this afternoon the key findings from the consultations. First of all, it's very important to note that more than 80% of the consulted children and youth shared direct or indirect experience. And the 20% that who participated also had views about CRVS, even though they didn't have any direct or indirect experience. So majority of them shared their experiences with the problems they had with their own registration or their knowledge about the problems experienced by other people in registration. Most of them had very positive registration experience. The children from 8 countries said that the common factors that made their experience very positive was first, that governments had made the registration process easy, affordable, and accessible to the constituents. Another factor that they cited was that their parents valued registration and they were themselves registered. So it was easier for them to process the registration. But unfortunately, there were also very many who said that they had negative experiences and that they were unregistered. And it's very interesting because what it's showing is that registration can be, or non-registration can be, a multi-generational problem. So if their parents haven't been registered, it's also very likely that their children would have problems in registration. But there are 2 particular problems that are alarming and I think will need to be highlighted. One involves the children who come from bonded labor families. So because they're bonded labor, they often do not have the right or feel that they do not have the right to be registered. The other one is the problem of children who have been orphaned or who have been abandoned. These children might have probable birth certificates that are not officially acknowledged. Another key problem that was pointed out by the children was that many of the children who have problems with registration are coming from families who are poor and whose parents are not registered and do not know the registration process. So most of the time, these births and deaths happen at home, and these families live in rural areas. So the children also talked about the problems they had with registration. And they also spoke about, they were very clear about their understanding of how important it is to be in the CRVS system. They talked about the importance of birth registration, and they said that first, the birth registration confirms their national identity, and it's a requirement to access services and support. And birth registration is a requirement to do civic duties like voting in elections. They also spoke about the importance of marriage registration and also the importance of death registration. And I think especially now in the time of the COVID pandemic, the necessity of birth registration is very crucial. The children also spoke about the challenges to registration, and they also made very important recommendations to our government leaders about what could be done to make sure that all children are registered. First of all, they talked about increasing the number of places for registration, especially in the remote areas, facilitating birth registration for home births, establishing alternative registration offices to report birth, and establishing alternative ways for birth registration and special ways for population who are in special need. So there are a lot of recommendations made by the children, and that they also talked about what the necessity to have better training and for personnel who are doing the registration to become more friendly and more accessible. So I think this is the full report will be very interesting reading for all of us, and I hope certainly hope that uh, the recommendations of the children will really be given more attention by government. And for the civil society, it's also very important that we continue to create public awareness about the importance of these documents, as well as to continue to advocate for a better processes and to make sure everybody gets into the picture. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for your insights, Amihan. We're really happy to hear about the key findings of the report and also about the positive experiences of the children that we were able to consult. But still, there are some issues that we need to address and push for in the next years. And personally, I am excited to hear the recommendations of children and the youth regarding the gaps that we have to address. Right, Abdul?
Yes, it is very right. So at this point, we will ceremoniously launch the report on the website www.countusinthepicture.org. So to see more information about this website, please point your eyes in the screen.
Welcome to Get Everyone in the Picture website. We are glad to have you here. Now let us explore together. On this homepage, you will be greeted by the 3 calls to action for a responsive and universal CRVS system. What is CRVS anyway? Go a little bit down and you will have your resources to get familiar with CRVS. We are excited to direct your attention to the newest report, Getting Children and Youth in the Picture. Read more of the report here. While you are at it, watch the video our children and young people have prepared for you. This website is made possible through a great partnership by these organizations. So come, visit the website. Let us together call for a better CRVS system because everyone deserves to be in the picture.
And to access the report on children and youth consultation on civil registration and vital statistics, please visit www.countusinthepicture.org. Now to share about the role of children and youth in the Second Ministerial Conference on CRVS and the importance of meaningful participation of young people on CRVS systems and processes, please welcome Lucho Valerio Sarandrea, Child Protection Specialist of UNICEF, East Asia and the Pacific.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Thank you very much, Abdul. And I will need to start my presentation with a request to all of you. A request to all of you that should I start using words that are too complex, what we call the jargon, the usual words that we use whenever we discuss among the colleagues, you should interrupt me and you should tell me, well, you are not having a child and youth friendly discussion. And this would be one small but very big objective that would be at the basis of my presentation. So as Abdul and Caroline were mentioning, my name is very long. It's Lucio Valerio Sarandrea. Some people say there is a family, but it's like only one person. And I am working for UNICEF, that is the United Nations Office for Children, in the area of Southeast Asia and the Pacific, on various aspects. And one of the aspects that I'm looking at is how to ensure that every child will get a birth certificate and will have a so-called legal identity. He will have an identity that will be able to be recognized by the state. And one of the key things that we do at UNICEF is to have consultation with children. Now, as hard as it can be, Not so many years ago, I was also very young. I was as a child. And I still remember how it was to be a child. And nothing is more upsetting to a child than to be consulted, to be asked for his or her own opinion, and to understand that this consultation is a fake one, that you have been asked a question, you have been asked the opinion, not because they really want to listen to you, but because it's just to be nice, and then at the end the decision will be taken differently. Let me do a very easy example. Like, I have 2 children, and sometimes when we discuss on where to go outside, where to go for dinner, where to go for the weekend. The worst thing that I can do is that if I ask my children, and I always ask my children, I need to be ready to accept and to take into consideration the advice. The worst thing that I will never do is to decide on where we are going with a fake consultation with children. That is absolutely wrong. So at UNICEF, we deeply believe in this. We deeply believe that the consultation with children need to be real, do not need to be fake consultations that we will be able to write in a report, we consulted 800, 1,000, 2,000 children, and everything is fine, and then we will do everything like we never heard. So what we did in the consultation that we did, and UNICEF did a part of this consultation on the birth registration and vital and civic registration and vital statistics, and especially in the aspect of birth registration, because birth registration is one of the aspects that UNICEF deals the most, like as the organization has explained before, dealing with children, is really to ask children, okay, what your problems are. And when you ask a question to children, you need to be very careful in not framing the question, in not giving an answer with a question. For example, it would be very wrong to ask the question, don't you think that the lack of a birth certificate is a problem in the enjoyment of your rights? This is not a child-friendly question. This is not a child-friendly consultation. Because first, the child would hardly understand what you're talking to, and then most probably the child would say yes. So the so-called leading question, the questions that have already an answer itself, would be always wrong. For example, coming back to the example with my kids, I would never say, don't you think that this weekend we should go to X or Y place? No, the consultation should always, be very much, open. So we did listen the children, and listening children is requiring special skills, and is also very important where and how you listen to children. One very good place to listen to children is in a place that you should or you attend quite a lot, that are school or educational institutions. I feel sorry that in the last year and a half of pandemics, unfortunately, many of the schools were closed and you had to do it online. But we did a lot of consultations also in the system of schools. So we did not call the children in the consultation, say, okay, let's have a discussion today about civic registration and vital statistics. Who of you would come, without being properly explained? It does not sound like a very interesting thing. So we try, to frame the discussions and having an interesting thing. And at the end, it was seeing how many children really understood what was the problem and became part of the initiative. Why I was mentioning school? Because school very often, not all the time, very often, is the first encounter that you, children, have with the authorities, with the state. What happens, unfortunately, in many cases, and already, some figures were given by Hazel and then by Caroline about the numbers of children not having registration in this part of the world. Many times, there are children that turn to the school age. They knock at the door of the school and said, okay, I want to start the school. I want to be enrolled in the school. And then they would say, well, sorry, where is your ID? Where is your registration? And only then the children realize that they do not have it. Or the parents realize that for some reasons they never managed to get it and they do not have the possibility of enrolling into the education system. Now it is clear that a child, even without documents, needs to be able to attend the school. So what many children were saying, it was something that is pretty obvious. If the school is the place where we are reaching in the state authorities, with the state, with the institution, why don't we involve the education system, the school, in facilitating the birth registration process? I was not clear, let me be clear. So, if there is a child that knocks at the school, the parents knocking at the school and tells, okay, here is your bag, today you should start school because you have turned 5 or 6 or 7, depending on the school age of the country. And then they only then realize that the school is not available because the child has not been registered. Well, the proper place to start the resolution of the problem of the birth certification and the legal identity identification document, where it is, you don't need to be directed to X office or to Y office, to the other office that you would never even understand maybe the meaning, but you should be assisted directly at the school. The authorities that are supposed to provide the consultation and the inclusion of you in the records should come to the school. So one good process is that the education authorities should be linked, and in most of the countries have been linked, with the institutions that are providing birth registration and legal identity certification. Is this one difficult idea? No, it is a wonderful idea, but that did not come to the minds of many people. So this is one practical advice that it was taken from children, and it is acted upon. So it was not in a part of the conversations and consultations just for the sake of saying, we have discussed with 800, 900 or 5,000 children, and then we did everything as the others were saying. So this was a little bit of the consultation, and I'm afraid, as usual, to speak a little bit too much, but I will try to pass a few of key messages. Now, I don't know, Caroline, if you would have the possibility of giving me immediate feedback, from the chat box or from the people, but I would like to ask a question to all the participants, and especially to children and youth. The question that I would have is pretty simple. Do you think that you are the future? So the question is very easy. Do you think that you are the future of the world, of your country? Just yes or no. Let me see, Caroline, if you see whatever comes first, as an answer.
Yes, we're seeing answers of yes on the chat.
Okay. I was a magician, and I knew that I would have gotten almost all the answers. I do this kind of game and trick most of the times. I asked this question and I said, yes, children are the future. We are the future of the world, of this country. Well, surprise, surprise, I don't think so. And when I say I don't think so, that you are the future of this world, people would say, why? What do you mean? This is a very strange answer. Well, I think that children and youth are not the future of the country because they are something more important than the future. Children and youth are the present of the country and the future as well. So when someone will tell you, you are the future, don't feel flattered, don't feel honored, yeah, I'm the future. No, don't feel happy. But you should say, well, future is tomorrow, and what about today? I am living as of today. I need to be present as of today. So children do not need to be on tomorrow's agenda, but need to be present on today's agenda. Because if you think that you are coming tomorrow, the decision will be postponed, or you will be looking, another word that I often hear, as an investment. Children are an investment. It seems that we are at the market, like, we are an investment. No, you are not an investment. You are a reality that needs to be taken care of directly, immediately. Or people would say, we need to give children a voice. Well, as far as I can hear, you all have a voice. You all have a very loud and clear voice. The problem is not your voice. The problem are the ears of the adults that sometimes are not prone to listen. So what we need to do is not that we need to give children a voice, but we need to be sure that we are listening to your voice, which is a very important thing and very also difficult thing. So what I am trying to say in this easy but very important and philosophical words, I'm trying to mean something very concrete. There is UNICEF is based on a convention on the rights of the child. And here, let me explain a little bit of what a convention is. A convention is one very big document with a lots of articles that are setting obligations on things that states should do. And all the states are offered to sign off to this convention, to say, okay, do you sign and do you agree that you will do this and this and this thing? And there is one convention, there is Convention on the Rights of the Child, that has been written, and almost all the states of the world have signed it up. You can read it. And also on the website of CRC Asia, there is a wonderful explanation of the Conventions on the Rights of the Child for children. It is not too complicated. It is made very easy. But what fundamentally this convention says is a small revolutionary thing. Before, children were considered as objects in the hands of their parents or the representatives. With this convention, children are considered subjects of rights. Before, children were consulted just for, or not even consulted, were considered the tomorrow. With the convention, they are considered as the present. And this convention gives a fundamental importance to the realization of children's rights by saying children's rights need to be taken into consideration and implemented immediately. And it gives a very big importance to all sorts of rights, including from birth registration and vital statistics. Because if you do not have a birth certificate, if you do not even have a certification, you are invisible, you do not exist. For example, I mentioned the situation of the school, when you want to go to school and then you are not even allowed. I've known persons that had this problem, that were knocking at the school and said, you do not exist. Or people that had to go to take vaccines and they could not take vaccines. I see the time is really flying and I do not have much time left. But what I want to mention in the few minutes that I have left is the following. There is a commitment, an obligation that we have taken on with the conference that we are talking to, and then it will be officially open next week. But there is also another commitment that we have done at the level of all the countries of the world. All the countries of the world have set 17 ambitious goals that will need to be realized by 2030. This was done in 2015. We gave ourselves 15 years to do so. And one of them is that each child should have a birth certification and a birth registration. That by 2030, there will be what we call no one left behind. There will be no one without any birth certificate or birth registration. And what Amihan was mentioning, it is absolutely true. For some categories of people, this is even harder to get because there is what she called rightly intergenerational cycle. Parents maybe do not have documents. And if you do not have documents as a parent, how will you be able to give a document to your child? Maybe the parents do not have valid documents. They are having some legal issues and they do not want to approach the authorities. Well, this is not a reason for removing the possibility of the child to get a birth certification and a birth registration. Or maybe you are immigrant. You are born in a state where your father or mother are working. Or you are born in a country and your father is abroad, so the registration cannot be done by your father. So there are many, many, many problems. And then that's what we are here trying to resolve. And how do we start? We start with the best experts in this field. And the best experts in this field are children themselves, the one that having the best knowledge of the issue, and they're giving us ideas and obligation to realize and to implement. Now, I'm not sure how much time is left for me to speak. Like, if you could give me any sign, because I think I have already hit my quota. But there is one thing that I would also like to mention. This was a difficult word up to a year and a half ago. Now we have all heard it and we hear it every day. The pandemics. The pandemics of the COVID-19, which is a brutal word and brutal reality that we keep living. I have 1 minute. This COVID-19 has shown something very important, that nobody is safe until everyone is safe. So we cannot be sure, anyone in the world cannot be sure if we do not deal with the pandemics together. And in order to fight, in order to have people vaccinated, in order to have people cured, we need to have one thing very clear. We need to have a demographic system that is up to speed. We need to know how many people are and where these people are. So birth registration is also fundamental, not for children only, but for everyone, because everyone really needs to be in the picture. Thank you very much, Caroline. The floor is yours. Back to you.
Thank you for your powerful message, Lucio. I love what you said about children being not just our future, but also our present. And truly, we have to change how we see children, because even now they can be part of nation building and of the solution. So at this point, we will now entertain a few questions from our participants. So do we have any question from our audience on Zoom or on Facebook Live? Okay, some people might still be thinking what questions to ask. So I have one here that I'd like to throw to Hazel. Yeah, and so Hazel, what was the biggest revelation on CRVS during your consultation with children and youth?
Well, actually, there were a lot. I mentioned earlier about the marriage and death certificates, how it affects, how it's closely linked with. I already had an idea how it's closely linked with the issue of early marriage or teenage pregnancy. But there's a story in the report, for example, of how it affected the child of that young girl who she cannot register her son. So I mean those things, and also I was happy to see in the report that there are some children who did not face any difficulties in getting their birth certificates, but you can see that the disparity. You can see who are the vulnerable ones, and it's easy for these people because they're in this situation. But those who are not in that situation, it's really very difficult for them. And I think one of the stories I've heard is also one of the child delegates who went to our Asian Children's Summit. That's a story that he shared, that he did not know that he could not travel, that what Kat mentioned. But thankfully, he was able to process it easily in time for the summit. So yeah, those stories, I mean, that's that it kind of sticks to you and lets you reflect on what should be done, because it's from the point of view or experiences of the children.
Thank you, Hazel. It's truly different when you are outside of the situation. You really don't know what the children are experiencing, but when you get to converse with them and you hear stories like this, it gives you a broader perspective of the issue. And it's true, there are good sides and bad sides of a certain situation, and that's really being highlighted when we have conversations with the children and youth who are affected by this issue. Thank you, Hazel, for your insights. Anybody who in our panelists who would like to add on that? Okay, so I'll move on to our next question. Again, for our participants, if you have anything you'd like to ask to our panelists, feel free to comment them in our comment section. So for this question, I'd like to throw it to Amihan. So among all the recommendations, which among them do you think should be the top priority of governments?
I think the most important is to make sure that everybody gets into the picture, because what we've seen is that sometimes, for example, if we say that children should be 18 before they get married, but they still have children before they're 18, they have early pregnancy, it doesn't mean that the children who are born earlier should not be registered. I think that the first thing that the government should do is really do a massive campaign to really explain to the people how to get registered and why they're qualified and why they need to be registered. I think that's one of the most important. The second one, which is just as important though, is to make sure that the personnel are friendlier. You know, that they don't put barriers, they don't laugh at the people if people don't have, and that they may do their jobs well. They make sure that what they've encoded is correct. Because what the kids have been saying is that they get into a lot of problems if the data that was encoded into the form isn't the correct information. For example, their sex or the spelling of their name. These are some of the things that can go wrong. So I think the first thing that governments have to do is really realize this is so important and everybody should be registered.
Thank you, Amihan, for your insights. That's true. It's very important to inform everybody how important CRVS is, how important it is to register your birth, your marriage, even death. And we need to also have very friendly personnel. That's something that we all have experienced. I'm sure that it's a different experience when the person who is attending to us is approachable and very helpful towards us, and that's something that even children experience. Lucho, would you like to add anything?
Maybe I would like to really reiterate, to confirm what Amihan said, is really being child-friendly, using very simple language and being friendly. In many countries, the authorities, I would even use the police, are seen by the children as a threat. I remember myself being a child and being afraid when a police officer was passing in front of me. Maybe it was only me. I did not do anything wrong. But this is absolutely a wrong concept. The authorities, the police officer, the person that is there to register you, is not your enemy, is your friend, and needs to be helping you. I can tell you one example that I have worked with in a country. A very stressful moment for a child is when he or she crosses the border. Okay, they're giving the document and the child is there shaking with the parents, giving the passport and thinking something will go wrong. So what we have done with UNICEF, we have created some child-friendly stations for border control. And how we have done it? We have put a very big teddy bear, so they even skip the line, a very big teddy bear next to it. The police officer is not dressed really like a police officer, but is like in a more civilian clothes. There are some drawings, some pictures, some small chairs, some lively colors. And you can see that children are passing there. Also, the police officer that is working there is more specialized in dealing with all sorts of problems for child, pressing the borders. And this creates more trust and avoids trauma. It's a small thing, but really means a lot, and it has been replicated in many countries. So if you're crossing the border, if you're going to an airport or on a border and you see a big teddy bear, please consider there is UNICEF that has made these child-friendly cross-border posts. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucho. That's a very good example as well as something that we have to replicate in all other areas as well, because children really are very sensitive to their environment and how we deal with them. So it's important for us to be able to give them that kind of positive experience as well. So I guess we don't have any more questions from our participants. Thank you again, Lucho, Amihan, and Hazel. And if you have any questions, again, please feel free to comment them in our chat so that we can entertain and answer them in the course of our discussion. And now, so to engage the young speakers we have here today, I would like to pass back the mic to Abdul.
Okay, so thank you, Carol. So right now we are in the second segment of our session entitled Youth Talk, Count Us In. So in this segment, we will meet 3 youth delegates who have been part of the in-country consultations, the regional forum, and my colleagues in developing the Children and Youth Statement, which will be presented during the Ministerial Conference on CRVS on November 17. So that will be next week. Okay, so but before we proceed, let us watch this video first.
From the series of consultations and the online regional forum, children and youth from Asia and the Pacific identified recommendations to submit to the 2021 Ministerial Conference on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics.
Ya, baik. Kalau menurut saya,
Thank you for the opportunity to provide training to personnel in charge is very important. Sometimes some personnel have less motivation due to low level of pay, and therefore we need to look at the level of pay and probably the salary and also the preparation on the end of the personnel itself to be able for them to have a better motivation.
What about the abandoned children? So I'm basically pointed out on behalf of them also. They don't have about their parents. So is it means that no rights to apply for any?
They also recommended governments to assist in the registration of vulnerable groups and guide concerned units, hospitals, and families in performing tasks related to processing death certificates. The children and youth from Asia and the Pacific also reiterated the need for information dissemination at the community level.
So maybe we need to find the right wordings that can move them. So we need to force them to put their foot in our shoes.
The forum participants set up a smaller group to work on their video statement about birth, marriage, and death registration.
You deserve to have a birth certificate. You deserve to have access to education and health services. We've heard you and we will stand by you. Your joint statement will be an important voice that will be heard by ministers and other developmental partners at the Ministerial Conference. I also want to say how sad I am that not all of you could make it to the Ministerial Conference in person. Because of COVID restrictions, many of you are going to have to attend remotely. Nevertheless, at the very least, your video statement will be heard and appreciated by all. And I will make sure personally that your voices are heard.
As the country consultations and online forum proved, children and youth want to be involved in bringing changes in society, even in the middle of a pandemic. The work in getting everyone registered continues. Listening to the voices of children and youth and giving them the space to participate in decision-making processes will help us achieve our goal to have universal and responsive civil registration and vital statistic systems that facilitate the realization of rights of all people in Asia and the Pacific.
Okay, so we have heard some of the perspectives of children and youth from the video. So, and in this youth talk, we will hear from our youngest speaker, their insights on why children and youth should be counted in the picture. So I'd like to welcome Amalea from Samoa, Danuska from Sri Lanka, and Juhi from India. So let's start first with Amalea, a youth leader from Samoa Victim Support Group. So hi Amalea, how are you doing today?
Hello, Abdul. I'm fine, thank you.
Yes, so it's nice to meet you again after a long break from the discussion in the support video statement. So Amalea, please share with us how children and young people like you in Samoa and in the Pacific in general are able to access services on birth registration. How is access to birth registration impacting their basic rights such as right to education or health or protection?
Thank you, Abdul, for the question. Talofa. I'm Amelia Va. I'm representing Samoa and the Pacific, the heart of Polynesia. But like our nation, voices of the children, youth get lost. We talk about delay in children's school enrollments. This is where parents get to come in, rush through the process to the children's birth registration. Especially when the birth certificate is required. And second, incorrect placements of the children in classes. This has to do with the children born in homes and were not baptized, and the confirmation process will based on assumption from the family members, and it actually resulting from changes age will be overestimated or underestimated. The other impact that really faces the children here is the health risk for the children overseas medical evacuation due to their passport process and other medical documents. If their birth registration is yet to be processed. But the most important thing that really impacted children, according to the realities that I've mentioned above, children's right, the children's right to be educated, the children's right to say, "Take me to school," their right to be identified, their right to be recognized, their right to register as part of the country's citizen. Thank you.
Okay, so very well said, Amalea. So thank you for sharing your thoughts. So now let's move on to Danuska, a youth advocate from Generation Never Give Up in Sri Lanka. So hi Danuska, how are you doing today?
Hi Abdul, I'm fine. Today is a nice day, and I appreciate to participate this event.
Yes, so it is very a nice day today. Okay, so Danuska, COVID-19 has affected children tremendously. It was never imagined. So how do you think that this has been made worse for children in the midst of pandemic because they do not have access to civil registration such as birth certificates? So what are your recommendations?
In Sri Lanka, e-service of CRVS is available from 2021, yet community peoples are not aware about their e-service, and most communication don't have proper internet facility to apply CRVS documents via online. Most people are not aware of the importance of CRVS document and what the pay request documents to apply for CRVS documents. At present, process of the applications and receiving document is very time consuming, and government needs to develop mechanism to issue CRVS documents within a shortened time period.
Okay, so excellent point, Danuska. So thank you very much for sharing that thought. Okay, so down to our last youth guest, Juhi, a young leader from World Vision. Okay, a young leader from off early. Do you think this is something to do with lack of access to civil registration? What are your recommendations?
Yes. I am Juhi from India.
My name is Juhi. I'm from India. Yes, I think this has something to do with lack of access of civil registration, like lack of awareness and knowledge among the people. People don't give it importance as well. The government has not run any campaign due to which people are not aware about marriage registration. For any kind of registration, I would like to suggest that the government should run a campaign for awareness among people. The people living in villages in India, this facility should be made near them, like in Anganwadi centers, so that they can get registered.
Okay, so thank you very much, Juhi. So, and now before we close the youth segment of this event, may I know from our youth speakers, what do you want to tell our leaders in Asia and Pacific in terms of improving services on CRVS for children and young people like you? So let us start with Amalea.
Amelia.
Okay. Amalea, my question again is, what do you want to tell our leaders in Asia and Pacific in terms of improving services on CRVS for children and young people like you?
Thank you, Abdul. This is what Samoa and the Pacific Children and Youth want to tell the leaders of improving services on CRVS. First, streamline the birth confirmation and validation registration process. Second, encourage community-based validation to ensure home birth are captured on the system. Third, coordinate computerized system linking hospital birth and home birth registration. And the last that I want to add on, because this is more about, is important about the children and the youth, we are the children and the youth. We want our voices to be heard. We want to be counted. We are here to live, to serve, to love, and nevertheless, to stand up for our right. So therefore, no one should left behind. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Amalea. So I guess, Danuska, you want to add something?
Yes, ensure a mechanism that all children have access to birth certificates and receive it within shorter time, right in a short time. Also establish a monitoring mechanism driven by government to ascertain who have not received birth certificates and arrange mobile service in all places in Sri Lanka, assuring equality. Not only that, the digitalized system which carries all preliminary documents so that no one will lose any documents at the birth scenes in has been shorted in a common place. Develop a mechanism to issue the birth certificates before child and the mother get discharged from the hospital. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Danuska. So Juhi, do you want to say something? Or should I repeat the question? Okay, so I will just repeat the question. So what do you want to tell our leaders in Asia and Pacific in terms of improving services on CRVS for children and young people like you? Hello, Juhi, are you there?
मैं सभी नेताओं से यही कहना चाहती हूँ कि
I want all the leaders to make rules so that every youth is aware of the fact that they should not marry before the right age. And before getting married, they should get registered. The government should make a law that no religious leader can get people married without registration. Civil registration is a law, and it is very important in the life of a person to have his birth registration, marriage registered, and also death registration. And when a child is born, the parents are given an authentic certificate called the birth certificate.
जानकारी होना जरूरी है। किसी भी बच्चे का जन्म होता है तो माता पिता को औपचारिक
So the parents should get an authentic certificate as the birth certificate. Birth certificate gives information of your child's identity, date of birth, place of birth, and name of one or both the parents. At a community level, World Vision India has organized various social programs on child marriage and birth registration through which many people were aware. Thank you.
Okay, so just like what Lucio said, that we, the children and youth, are not just the people.
Thank you for facilitating that eye-opening discussion, Abdul. And of course, thank you, Amalea, Juhi, and Danushka, for your passion and for sharing your stories and recommendations. And I just want to say that we hear you and we are grateful that you are able to join us in this session. So now to urge governments, UN agencies, CSOs, and her fellow children and youth to take action, I'd like to call on Anissa from Indonesia. And just to inform everybody, Anissa will be speaking in Bahasa, but you will directly hear the English translation. Anissa?
Ya. Baik, terima kasih atas kesempatan.
Thank you for the opportunity given to me. I am Anissa from Children and Youth Advisory Network, Save the Children Indonesia. In this opportunity, I would like to emphasize that one of the children's rights that is vital to fulfill is civil rights, including documents, important documents for the lives of children and youth. The rights must be respected, fulfilled, and protected so that children can get their rights fulfilled. Important documents such as birth certificate, marriage certificate, and death certificate are human rights. Birth certificate is a form of protection and recognition from the state to a child's legal status, such as to their names, place of birth, parents, and citizenship. According to the National Statistics Bureau in Indonesia, as of 2019, there were 86% of children who had received a birth certificate. This means that there are still 14% more that still need serious attention from the government. My friends who haven't received birth certificates because they face problems with infrastructure and limited understanding of the importance of birth certificates. That needs to be addressed so that no children is left behind in achieving a better future. Marriage certificates are important documents for women who have who experience abuse and experience domestic violence. Marriage certificates will protect us from fake marriages or child marriages or forced marriages. With this, we can access our parents' pension facilities. Children are one of the most important thing human rights. We, children and youth from Asia and Pacific, we have potentials to contribute to the society, but we realize that that potential can only grow when our rights are fulfilled and protected. We hope that the government, the society, and other individuals, as well as organizations, are committed in developing or in protecting and fulfilling those potentials. This starts by ensuring vital documents, increasing the number of personnel and centers that are accessible, efficient, and accurate civil registration involving us. Register us and involve us now. Thank you.
Thank you for that amazing, great message, Anissa. Now, to reiterate the importance of engaging children and youth in issues affecting them, let's all watch this.
मेरे वालदा शनाख्ती कार्ड कोनी जिंदी वजह तो मेरी जन्म पर्ची नहीं बनी जन्म पर्ची ना होने की वजह तो ना मैं स्कूले जा सकना ना होर कोई काम कर सकना मेरी हुकूमत नूं दरखास्त दे के मेरे जाए होर भी बच्चों की जन्म पर्ची तैयार करें
Truly, we can and we should get everyone in the picture. To give the commitment message as well as the closing remarks, please welcome Director of UNSCAP Statistics Division, Rachel Bevan.
Thank you so very much for this opportunity, and I feel truly humbled to be speaking after so many inspiring speakers and videos. And I'm really pleased as well that this is actually my first speaking event as the new Director of Statistics Division in UNSCAP, and what an amazing event to be my first one. So I'd like to thank every single person for actually being here today, for taking your time to give the attention that this issue really needs. Thank you as well, especially to our hosts, the Child's Rights Coalition Asia, as well as World Vision International, and all of the supporting staff that have made this event possible. But I really want to give a very heartfelt, special thanks to the panel and to our amazing youth speakers, but also to all of those involved in the youth consultations. I know that I'm not very good at remembering all the numbers, so I might not be able to remember the exact number put forward so eloquently to help us in moving our actions forward. So it's my pleasure to deliver a closing statement for this event on the voices of children and youth on civil registration and vital statistics. As you all know, ESCAP will soon host the Second Ministerial Conference on Civil Registration and Vital Statistics in Asia and Pacific. So during the conference next week, we'll have ministers, senior level officials, and representatives of civil society from around the globe. And they'll be joining in celebrating the midpoint of the Asia and Pacific Civil Registration and Vital Statistics Decade. Since the beginning of this CRVS decade in Asia and Pacific, we've seen amazing progress towards universal civil registration, and many countries are actually getting much closer to registering all births and deaths. But whilst we're actually closing the gap, we know that there's still a long way to go to actually getting everyone in the picture, but more importantly as well, making sure that every person has that accurate record and actually has their rights. So what we've heard during this event is about those numbers. It's about the fact that 166 million children under the age of 5 have not yet been recorded. 64 million of those are actually living in this region. I hope that we will all try to remember those numbers because they're important. 64 million, it's almost the same population as a whole country like the UK where I am currently. But whilst we've been making progress, we know we've still got to do so much more. And one way that we can actually make more progress and accelerate this work is by involving the voices of children and youth in policy making decisions, by actually providing spaces that are inclusive, but more importantly, by actually listening to actually what you're saying to us and what you're telling us. And we know that it's really critical that we recognize that children and youth, they're not just bystanders watching these processes. These are important. You know, you're part of, as we've heard already, you're very much part of the present. And you have a stake in what's happening in all of these countries now. And it's important that you all feel, that we all feel involved in actually what we're trying to do to meet these goals and targets of the regional action framework for the CRVS. And also, as we heard, about achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. As was highlighted so well by our youth representatives, and from the stories we've heard, we can really draw a lot of lessons from what's happening in the different countries. So what we want to kind of take away from today is to actually remember those lessons, to actually listen to each other, to listen to the stories and to take further action. So, and as today's leaders, we actually have that opportunity right now to actually amplify the voices of youth and children, to promote those into meaningful participation in the processes and systems that you're very much a part of now. But I want to really just finish by saying thank you so much for all of you, for your engagement, but so much more than that, for your commitment as well to actually making a difference in this work and in the lives of children and youth throughout this whole region. So thank you all so very much. And thank you for letting me be part of this amazing event.
Thank you, Rachel. And thank you again to our speakers, partners, child and youth leaders, supporters, and guests for joining us today.
This has been a productive and insightful session, and I hope that we can continue working together to ensure that every child is able to enjoy their right to an identity.
Again, if you want to access the report, please visit www.countusinthepicture.org. That's the end of our program. Have a great weekend, everyone.